WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the program, new data is proving that spending time outdoors can be beneficial for our eyesight. We'll hear from NPR's Maria Godoy later in the show.
But first, on the Metro, do you recognize these sounds?
I don't believe I do.
I don't either. But apparently I'm told by production that those are people playing pickleball at the Atlanta Open in 2023. And by this point, you might be familiar with that kind of back and forth. And that's because a report from the Sports and Fitness Industry Association says there are now 4.8 million pickleball players in the U.S. That same research suggests that the sport has become one of America's fastest growing, increasing 40% between 2019 and 2021. If you've been around Detroit parks, you may even know what we're talking about. In Royal Oak and Berkeley and in Detroit's parks, you can find people of all ages playing the game. And now there's a new pickleball complex open in Warren, the first pickleball-only complex in Metro Detroit. To discuss the new complex, we're joined by two of the folks behind it, starting with Sam Briko, co-owner of Bash Pickleball Club in Warren. Sam, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Nick Hernandez, head coach at the same complex. Nick, welcome to the Metro.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you guys here too, because pickleball is something that apparently has been around since 1965, but not around these streets that I've been on. So, Nick, can you tell me, or for people who haven't seen it, what is pickleball? How does this sport work?
So pickleball is basically a hybrid sport, similar to tennis, similar to racquetball, kind of a mix of a bunch of different sports. You have a paddle-sized wiffle ball. A wiffle ball is what you use to play with. Paddle-sized paddle. Differs a little bit than tennis. People call them rackets. Pickleball, we call them paddles. Basically, most of the time, people play doubles. It's a little bit easier. There is singles, fun to watch, a lot more taxing on the body. So you go out to the local rec, parks, things like that, you're going to see a lot of doubles action. 2-on-2, play against each other. Scoring's a little odd when you start off. So it's fun to learn. I think I like it, and a lot of people do like it because it is easy to pick up. It is easy to learn. All age ranges, as you mentioned, can play the game. A lot of people learn the game, then they go out with their friends, kind of backyard activity, and it's really fun.
Yeah, when I was looking at video of this, it kind of reminded me of if you took people and shrunk them down and put them maybe on like a ping pong table or something like that, this hybrid of ping pong and tennis. It's wild for me. Sam, you seem to be into this, though. Can you tell us what drew you to the game and to decide to even open the complex in the first place?
Okay, well, I started playing last year.
Yeah.
That's
quick.
Yeah, 9 months ago to be exact. We would go play at the park, and at the park they had 8 total courts, and I would see hundreds and hundreds of people, just 200 people, typically just waiting, playing. There would be a paddle rack system, so it was somewhat organized, but it was all skill levels, and I would just talk to, it's a very social sport, so I would talk to everybody and be like, hey, where do you guys play in the wintertime? And the answer I would get was like, nowhere, nothing dedicated. Maybe we'll find a empty hall and put up a net and, make some lines with tape. And so I took a few videos every time at the park, and I'd send it to my brother. I'm like, this would be a great business idea. We need a dedicated facility for pickleball, organized play, and that's how we got started.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is good, especially if you talk about having a place to play during the wintertime. I'm sure outdoors isn't exactly the most conducive for pickleball. But Nick, I think your story is also interesting here because you had a profession. It's my understanding that you were actually a pharmacist, but now I'm introducing you as coach. What caused you to leave behind the pharmaceutical life and decide coaching? This is pickleball. This new sport. We don't even have a facility in Metro Detroit, but that's what I'm going to do.
So I've been playing since 2019. I actually found the game when I was finishing some rotations for pharmacy school. Got into the game as an ex-tennis player, picked it up pretty quick, and just kind of same thing, fell in love with it. Moved here to Michigan, worked for a couple years as a pharmacist, and then I kind of stepped away to be a stay-at-home dad. Then I was like, well, I like pickleball. There's a need for, some coaching in the area. So I started doing some small stuff. And then as of recent, probably the last 2 months, I met Sam and his brother, Kevin. And, we just struck a conversation. And I have met a lot of different people the same way Sam has through a bunch of different parks all over the area. As far east as St. Clair Shores, Grosse Pointe area. As far west as, we were just talking about, I have friends in Grand Rapids. So all these different people, and people have told me before, why don't you get into coaching? And I was like, oh, it's okay. I just do it for fun. So an opportunity arose, and I said, well, why not? Let's give it a shot.
Yeah. Man, you said you moved here. Where were you originally from?
So originally from Texas.
Big pickleball scene in Texas?
It's getting bigger. I mean, all over it's getting bigger.
Right.
But obviously in Texas, there's a lot more places opening up that are completely outdoor because we don't have too much of a winter in Texas. So when I moved here, same thing as, I have friends tell me, oh, it's 50 degrees. Let's go play pickleball outside. I say, no, thank you. I'm okay. Yeah. If it's not 70s, I'm still getting used to it a little bit. So.
Yeah, all right, Texas. We got to introduce you to the thermal underwear that my grandpappy taught me about back when he was logging back in 1902. But we'll deal with that later. Moving over to you, though, Sam, we're talking about how growth of pickleball is happening. But even though I hear about this growth, you're the one who's taken the first leap out, making this complex here. All right, push back. Tell how is growth happening in Michigan? Let me know that.
Pretty good. We've been open for 10 days.
Okay.
So far, the results been really good. People are very, very happy, very thankful that we, build a facility dedicated. We're open from 7 a.m. to 11, so we have open play, 3 sessions a day, 3 hours. We have clinics. We have a really nice introduction to pickleball. It's completely free to anybody, so if you haven't played before and you want to get into the sport, we do offer a 90-minute class with Coach Nick to introduce you to pickleball.
All right, well, because this is the important thing here, right? If we're starting this new sporting venue, people who love it, I'm sure they'll find it. People who want it, probably still going to need some people who aren't so familiar with it to get into it, right? And one of the things you already told me, high intensity workout. So that would seem to me like, maybe someone who's like me, who hasn't really gotten back out there, knees can't hold up. I'm a little nervous. Why should I go out and play pickleball? I want to keep my knees.
There's different skill levels, and we have our leagues and play organized by skill level. So you could start at a 2.0, which is a beginner level, and we have intermediate and advanced. That's the nice thing about an indoor facility. It's organized play versus the park. So we could accommodate all skill levels.
All right. Yeah. And let's talk about some of the folks that you've spoken to in terms of what you've been doing. Nick, you're the guy who gets out there, talks to the people who are starting up. What do they tell you about why they got into pickleball in the first place?
A lot of it is because maybe they didn't come from any type of racket background. They hear about it. They say, oh, I hear this buzz, but I don't know what it is. They get into it because maybe their friends got into it, or maybe their kids found it somewhere else, or they heard about it. And so they get into it. And the nice thing about it is you want to be basically in the beginning levels when you're getting people into the game. It's a pretty friendly sport. A lot of people are welcoming, whether you have any racket background. I've met people who have no racket background at all. They just say, hey, I played volleyball. Okay, no problem. I've played softball. I've played lacrosse, or I've played a racket sport, ping pong, racquetball, handball. I mean, you find them from all over, and people who are say, hey, I'm unathletic completely. Can I play pickleball? And the answer is yes. So it's friendly enough that you can put it in your hand, and it's a wiffle ball, it's a paddle. You get on the court, jump on, learn how to play, learn the score, and then just get out and have a blast.
Yeah, the ball hits you in the thigh or something. You don't have to worry about a huge welt coming home or anything like that, where someone's telling you, like, what have you been up to, man? That looks a little tough. This is good. These are all good things. Sam, though, before we get out of here, I just do want to hear from you about what's next. What are you guys planning next to do at the facility moving forward now that you've started out? What are your next goals?
So we build out half the facility with 10 full-size dedicated courts. If everything goes well, by the end of the year, we'll add additional 6 to 8 courts. We are including summer leagues for teens and seniors, and then just our calendar is full with daily activities, open play, training, and clinics.
All right. Well, looking forward to that, hearing more about more sports coming up around here. I'm always happy to have that. Happy to have something else to do in the spring other than just baseball. We need other sports. I like the rise of volleyball. Rise of pickleball might fit in there. We got spring football going.
Yes.
Let's get some more sports going out here. Get more active here in Michigan. Sam Briko, co-owner of Bash Pickleball in Warren, and Nick Hernandez, head coach at the complex. Thank you both for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. That was Nick Austin. I'm Tia Graham. I think about playing volleyball, and I think I may be able to play pickleball. I think I can do this. However, coming up, we'll talk about the work to restore Malcolm X's home in Inkster. You all stay right there.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. And as an advocate for civil rights, Malcolm X's activism brought him around the U.S. and the world. A spokesman for the Nation of Islam until 1964, he was pushing for black empowerment. And a lot of those roots of Malcolm X's life are right here in Michigan, including Lansing and Inkster. And now one Wayne State anthropology professor is working to restore the home of Malcolm X's Inkster home. And as part of this effort, Tareq Ramadan won the Governor's Award for Historic Preservation that happened on May 2nd. And here to discuss the Inkster home and the efforts to restore it and the life and times of Malcolm X is Professor Tareq Ramadan. Professor Ramadan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Tia. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So, Malcolm X moved around a lot in his life. How did he end up here in Inkster?
So really, the story of him getting to Inkster is predicated upon the fact that his brother, Wilfred Little, his elder brother, who was very close to Malcolm, ultimately helped to facilitate his parole from Massachusetts State Prison. And so in 1952, in August, he was able to essentially help to get Malcolm to his home out of prison and begin a new life. And so that happens in August, and he arrives in Inkster on August 8th of 52.
Wow. So he arrives, he's Malcolm Little, he's fresh out of prison, and he's looking to rehabilitate himself. He's looking to kind of get back into society. In what ways did Inkster help inform him and persuade, and not persuade him, but make that change to Malcolm X?
Yeah, so when he arrives, within the next few weeks or so, by the end of the month and by early September, Wilfred, again, had helped facilitate a meeting with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, head of the Nation of Islam at the time. And so that began the sort of official membership with the Nation of Islam and his official affiliation with the group. And that happens again with Wilfred. Inkster was home to an increasingly growing African-American community, but also a gradually growing Black Muslim community. And so Malcolm Little at the time, him and Wilfred were actually interested in sort of investing in the city. He even had plans to build a Nation of Islam temple there. Now, it didn't materialize, but they were very much, Malcolm didn't just see Inkster as some place that, some sort of stopover. It was a place that he actually wanted to invest time and energy and efforts in, and he did his best. He tried.
Yeah, which is so interesting to think about once again, that he was here with his brother, Nation of Islam, and it just kind of built from there. It kind of just grew into, who we know today. But describe why in 2021 you thought it was important to restore this home in particular, that Malcolm X was there, and what was the purpose of the project?
So I guess going back a little bit, my interest in Malcolm X stems from the 1990s. My first sort of encounter with Malcolm X was through the movie, through Spike Lee's film. And so I found it to be a personally and incredibly empowering sort of narrative and story. It's my first introduction to Malcolm X as a young, I'm not sure if I wasn't even a teenager yet. So, but at a time in my life where I was sort of searching for identity, I felt that his voice resonated with me. And from that point on, I was interested in Malcolm. That was my first intellectual hero. And so when I heard, actually from my sister, who at the time was working at the Arab American National Museum, she had actually told me that, did you know that Malcolm X used to live in Inkster? I had no idea. And I used to drive down that street, I can't tell you how many times, past the house and never knew. So when I began to look and search for who was responsible for the project, I looked and found out that Mr. Aaron Sims, who was my colleague and who was also running the project, was working on preserving the house. And so I got in touch with him in 2018. But it wasn't until 2020 that we really began collaborating. So from that point on, I called Aaron. I said, look, what can I do? Here's, I'm a professor at Wayne State University. I love Malcolm X. He's someone that I'm personally interested and intrigued by and love. And so I wanted to, bring my energy and my efforts to the project. And so he said, welcome aboard. And from there, we, began to write a grant. We got the grant within 6 months. We landed the house in the National Register of Historic Places through our nomination with the State Historic Preservation Office in Lansing. And we organized an archaeological excavation project with Wayne State, where I'm a professor. And we've just continued to renovate the home. Mr. Arthur Edge is also our contractor, who is really the one responsible for the actual physical restoration of the house. So he's been really central.
Thinking about the restoration of the home, of course, you're an anthropology professor. I think about the importance of doing this type of research on topics or in areas that aren't often researched or aren't often looked into a little bit further. And you have this degree in anthropology, you're a professor. Talk about the importance of this particular angle looking into history.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most understudied sort of periods of Malcolm's life. And so I think there for the community, there's great intrigue and investment in really trying to locate Malcolm X within the sort of long continuum of history. We don't hear about Inkster, and we don't hear about the role that Inkster played in Malcolm's life. We have to assume that there was some impact that Inkster had on the city, and so, but also Detroit. I'm in the process of writing a book manuscript that centers Detroit in the Motor City and also Inkster in Malcolm's sort of life. In a way, I mean, he was a self-proclaimed Detroiter. And one of the last speeches he gave before he was killed, a week before he was killed, he said, I'm from Detroit. I used to live out here in Inkster. So he harkens back to his time in Inkster, and it happens at the tail end of his life. But in many ways, it brings Malcolm kind of full circle back to a place that we can really call kind of his hometown in many ways, because he wasn't there for very long, but the changes that happened in Malcolm's life were absolutely pivotal in shaping who he would become: a social revolutionary, a civil rights activist, an internationally recognized human rights leader. And Inkster is really, in many ways, and Detroit are both really central to that story.
Something about the city of Detroit, the Metro Detroit in general, we just think the people that we've been able to produce just based on having that fire and that hustle and that hunger to do things, greater things. So, what happened there in particular in Inkster? Why there?
Wilford was living in Detroit before that, and ended up buying a new home. He had young kids and a new family, and so he bought a brand new home in 1950, and it was a home with in a community of mostly working class African Americans, and there were some Black Muslims who were living in the area. These were adherents to the Nation of Islam, and I imagine that there were. I imagine that those were issues that I think helped to motivate Wilford to pick Inkster. And of course, the blatant racism that was so widespread in Metro Detroit, especially in places like Dearborn, which Malcolm himself talks about in that same speech, where there was a clear policy of segregation. And so Inkster was a kind of a place where he, I think, could feel in many ways comfortable. And so Malcolm ends up working in areas around Inkster as well, in neighboring Wayne, for Henry Ford Motor Company, and also for Garwood Industries. And so he's active in the area, and together they're working. A lot of their work happens in Detroit, but without a doubt they are. I think Inkster had a certain kind of appeal. Again, it's because of the changing economic, but also demographic conditions, and also because this growing Muslim sort of community.
So, just continuing on, we're talking to Tareq Ramadan. He is a professor at Wayne State University, anthropology professor at Wayne State University. And while I still have you, I think about, of course, on May 2nd, you won that Governor's Awards for Historic Preservation. Why is this award so important, and why has it meant so much to you all?
because I believe this is one of the few instances in which African American history has been preserved at this sort of level as well. And it also credit to Dr. Krista Rzuski, who's our chairperson at the department, for engaging with the archaeological project. And so these efforts to really bring to the forefront one of the most, I think one of the most compelling narratives and stories in the life of, I think, any American, someone as someone like Malcolm X, a global icon. We know, I think, the narrative about his broad sort of story as sort of depicted in the film, and of course through many different biographical texts. But I think that, sort of homing in on this sort of particular and very specific time period and this specific location, I think is really pivotal to framing Malcolm X in a more, I think for Detroiters in particular, in a way that really, I think, connects Malcolm to the city. And I think that these projects, and of course the recognition by the state, is really representation of the fact that there is increased recognition for the contributions that Malcolm X made, not just to Detroit or to the United States, but really to the world, because at the end of his life, he was an international, sort of unofficial diplomatic figure who was leading an international global human rights campaign.
And that's my last thing where I'm going to leave you before I let you go, is just about the project in general, the restoration project of the home in Inkster. And I think about Malcolm X and this being this figure in this, especially from an early point in his life where he openly talked about white people and white people being the devil and different things like that. And then as you go later in life, he starts to talk a little bit more about collaborative efforts. He talks a little bit more about community in a more human, holistic way. So, we see that change and we see that pivot. How does this restoration project help continue that idea of working together in community?
Well, what this project has done is it has brought in people from all walks of life, from all ethnic, racial, cultural, backgrounds, orientations, to contribute efforts and time and energies into helping preserve this project. I mean, we received, Dr. Krista Rzuski and I received the Wayne State Community Engagement Award about a week or so before the award from Lansing, the Governor's Award, which was, and that award really helps to, I think, it represents a much broader effort, a collective effort that has brought in people from all over the community, not just Inkster, but the surrounding areas, to really help, I think, bring Malcolm's story to light. And also, Inkster has become, he's become a hometown hero in Inkster over the years, right? And so I think that's important too. And I want to also mention that we were able to get a plaque in recognition for Malcolm X at Room 101 State Hall, where he gave a speech in October of 1963. And so it's now called Malcolm X Auditorium, and it has a little narrative, little caption underneath it, but it's a beautiful bronze plaque and with a photo of him from that talk. And so we've, been trying to really, give Malcolm his flowers, to make sure that Malcolm is recognized in the city, at the university, and in other contexts, because he absolutely deserves that recognition.
I just, historians and anthropology, it's just such an important role that to keep these stories alive and to keep these messages continued on to next generations and younger generations. So Tareq Ramadan, Wayne State University anthropology professor, thank you so much for joining us on the show. He secured a grant to restore Malcolm X's Inkster home. And once again, we're going to continue to follow this story and continue to learn more about Malcolm X and what's happening in Inkster with you. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. And Tia, you've been looking at this story for a long time. Curious why Malcolm's Inkster home was such a point of fascination for you.
Well, for me, just growing up with the family that I had, the parents that I had, the grandparents that I had, Malcolm X was very much a fixture. Stories told about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., of course, but Malcolm X was definitely one of the ones that I learned a lot about, not just from the film, but just from conversations from my grandparents and my grandpa and my dad. So I just wanted to know, as soon as I learned about the Inkster home, I just wanted to know how, why, when, where, how did he get here, what was the importance of him being here, and just following along with the story since 2021. It's been a really, really, really cool thrill ride, and I can't wait to continue on to see what more we can learn about Malcolm X's impact here in the city of Detroit, Metro Detroit, Inkster area. So that's why I've just been fascinated with it, because it's just personal to my family.
All right. Well, that's not the only thing that's happening in the area. We also are learning about some of the things happening on the dining scene at a more casual level. And with so much happening, the way we sometimes keep up with the change is by talking with Melody Batens. She's the restaurant critic for the Detroit News, and she covers everything from new restaurants to issues in the service industry. This week, Melody spoke with WDET's Ryan Patrick Hooper about the power of pop-ups in Metro Detroit and a new spot called Lania in Brush Park.
This is a northern Spain-inspired restaurant, very neighborhoody. It's very bright in there, lots of floor-to-ceiling windows. There's an open fire behind the bar there as soon as you walk in, which is really cool, and they do a lot of their cooking there, not just meats, but a lot of vegetable cooking there as well. But it's very Basque-inspired, so you've got a lot of sausage, a lot of cheese, sherry, wine, lots of ham. I think there's an option to just add ham to half the dishes. And it's Iberian ham, which is this Spanish ham that I think has only been allowed to be imported for the last couple years. I have to do more research on it, but I'm sure we'll be talking more about this restaurant. People will be. And not just because it's new and it's hot, but the people behind it are kind of veterans of the industry. There's a connection with Shelby, the cocktail lounge at Shelby and Congress in downtown that is, known for their cocktails and kind of loungy, small plates. But this is much more of a neighborhood thing. I thought the menu was really interesting. I thought the food was very good, and you don't see a lot. We talked about La Feria a while back. That is kind of our staple of Spanish tapas in Midtown. This is a little different. This is more northern Spain.
And La Feria, so consistent over the years, which you have pointed out in your reporting for the Detroit News. You mentioned Shelby, and we're going to kind of bounce around here to a pop-up that has a great name, if people have not heard it before, Fried Chicken and Caviar. Great name, but go further. What is Fried Chicken and Caviar all about?
Fried Chicken and Caviar is two chefs, Shai Walker and Nick Cole, and they are returning to Shelby. They're going to be popping up there for brunch service every Sunday in May. So you got a couple left. I visited the first time they did this, and there was fried chicken, there was caviar, there was eggs, there was mimosas, there was cocktails. It was busy. So if you do go plan it out, make a reservation. These two women pop-up chefs have been, we've talked about them. They are at the same time they're doing the Shelby pop-up. They're also a chef in residence at Boss Blue, which is in kind of the cultural area on Ferry Street. They're doing the menu at their daytime cafe, breakfast and lunch, weekdays. So very, very two busy chefs. We've heard a lot from them, and I'm sure more to come as well. Pop-ups are such a big part of the fabric of the dining scene for their, the chefs have flexibility, they're nomadic, they're creative, they're not tied down to a location or a general manager or a certain kitchen or even a name. There's just, they can just go everywhere, and they do.
That was Melody Batens from the Detroit News speaking with WDET's Ryan Patrick Hooper about pop-ups in Detroit.
Coming up, we'll chat about a new report that gives people a reason to get outside and maybe even improve something along the way. We'll see about that. Nick Austin's here. I'm Tia Graham. You all stay right there.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I'm Tia Graham. Just really quickly, there's a slight chance of rain this afternoon. Temperatures will be near 80 degrees, even higher right now at WDET. We see temperatures around 74 degrees, sunshine as well. But there are a lot of benefits of spending time outdoors. Research suggests that being closer to nature can improve our mood. Now, new data is proving that spending time outdoors can also be better for our eyesight. NPR's Maria Godoy has the story.
On a sunny weekday afternoon, a group of elementary school-age kids played tag at a park in suburban Silver Spring, Maryland. This outdoor playtime isn't just good fun and exercise. Research shows it's also key to preventing children from developing myopia or nearsightedness.
About 50% of my patients have myopia, which is an incredibly high number.
Dr. Noha Ikdawi is a pediatric ophthalmologist in Wheaton, Illinois. She says the number of kids she sees with myopia has grown astronomically over the 15 years she's been in practice.
So nearsightedness is just needing glasses to see distance. And inherently, being nearsighted isn't bad necessarily.
The problem is when you get myopia in childhood, it gets progressively worse. Myopia occurs when the eyeball stretches and grows too long, so faraway objects look blurry. If the eyeball stretches too much, it can increase the risk of serious eye problems down the road.
Like retinal detachments, macular problems, glaucoma, cataract.
That's why prevention is so important. But how can spending time outside help? That's what Ian Morgan wanted to know. He's a researcher at the Australian National University. A couple of decades ago, Morgan noticed that rates of myopia in East Asia were much higher than they were in Sydney.
We thought, well, Australians are famous for their outdoor-oriented lifestyle, and we thought maybe there's a link between getting outside a lot and preventing the development of myopia.
So he designed a 2-year study of more than 4,000 kids in Sydney to test that theory. Turns out he was right.
The children who reported spending more time outdoors were less likely to be myopic, and we showed later, and less likely to become myopic.
Morgan's research caught the attention of Dr. Pei Chang Wu, an ophthalmologist in Taiwan. His young son was starting first grade, and he worried about Taiwan's sky-high rates of myopia. 90% of students there have it by the time they leave school. Wu says the academic culture in Taiwan schools didn't allow for much outdoor recess.
So many teachers, they want children to practice their homework. And in Taiwan, outside is also very hot.
So kids weren't so keen to go outside. But Wu convinced his son's elementary school to increase outdoor time. He also recruited a control school. A year later, his son's school had half as many new myopia cases as the other school.
We see the result is very successful.
He did more research at more schools and eventually convinced Taiwan's Ministry of Education to encourage all elementary schools to send students outdoors for at least 2 hours a day, every day. Since the program launched in 2010, Taiwan's childhood myopia rates have dropped significantly. Ian Morgan says it's a huge achievement.
Certainly the people who have led the field are the people in Taiwan.
Noha Ikdawi says the leading theory about why outdoor time helps is that outdoor light stimulates the eye to release more of the neurotransmitter dopamine.
We think it raises dopamine levels in their bodies and changes something about the growth rate of the back of the eye to stop it from stretching. And it's that stretching that causes nearsightedness.
And to get that eyesight protection, the research suggests kids should be spending at least 2 hours a day outdoors every single day.
To me, it's like eat your vegetables. You have to spend time outside.
Ikdawi says it doesn't even matter if it's sunny or cloudy or what the kids are doing.
You can go to the park, you can ride your bike, you can sit and be a tree, walk your dog. All these things count.
That was Maria Godoy reporting on why getting outside can be good for your eyesight. And Nick, I don't know how much you're getting outdoors these days, but I know I need some sunlight on my eyes because I need glasses.
Is that how that works?
I don't know. But what I do know is I need some sunlight, and if this data is real and it's true, then I need it to improve my eyesight. I can't see without my glasses. I feel like, my dad. I do. I feel like my dad, an old man right now.
I don't want that. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's what it takes, make sure to get your sunlight.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of getting outside, we have WDET reporter Brianna Tinsley, and recently she got outside and talked a little bit more about what's happening outside of our building here at WDET. The city of Detroit is now ready for move-in homes. And for some, that means there's good news, as new homes are currently being built in Detroit's East Village neighborhoods. A real estate developer with Great Water Opportunity Capital is building 23 homes on Fisher Street near Kercheval. WDET's Brianna Tinsley began this conversation with Great Water Opportunity Capital developer Jed Halbert, discussing why he chose to build in East Village.
We chose this neighborhood because of the existing strength of the surrounding neighborhoods. For those who are familiar, the East Village is part of a broader group of neighborhoods called the Villages, which includes Indian Village and West Village. And if you don't know it, you should come down and check it out. They're beautiful historic homes. There's great bars and restaurants and places to go out to eat. And so we really were responding to the fact that there was already so much going on here. And then there was some empty land right on the edge of it where you could live close to the action in a new house. That's a great opportunity and why we chose this area.
Can you tell me about the different home options? You said colonial, craftsman.
Sure. So there's 4 different layouts. There's ranging from 2 to 4 bedroom, depending on how you choose to lay it out. Each one of those 4 floor plans comes in 3 different exterior styles. So you can choose a craftsman home, a colonial, or a cottage. And then each of those exterior styles comes in a dozen different colors. So there's a really wide palette to choose from. And we haven't even gotten to talk there about all the interior finishes you can choose, the flooring, the countertops, the cabinets, all that stuff too. For people ordering semi-custom homes, they're able to choose that in their new home.
Did you pick those styles to mesh with the rest of the villages, or were you looking to do something a little different?
You got it exactly right. Like, we value this as a historic neighborhood. We wanted to build homes that have the layout of a modern home with that open feel, that have the energy efficiency of a modern home, but that fit very comfortably into the historic fabric of the neighborhood so that they exist seamlessly alongside older homes. And that's what I think we've achieved with these historic styles.
What's the price range?
So if you're ordering a new home from us, the price range starts in the high 200s and goes up into the high 300s. And then it's up to you how many options you want to add. So the homes that are for sale today range from $339 up to $459, and those reflect the fact that we've added a bunch of additional options, a finished basement, a fireplace, that sort of stuff. So it really is up to the buyer where they want to land in terms of the price point based on the options.
I'm sure there are some people who might feel that those prices are a little bit high. They're concerned about the interest rates. Can you break it down a little bit of what that might look like monthly?
I wish I could. I actually don't know what that means monthly. It depends a lot on what mortgage program you get. Mm-hmm. So in this neighborhood, and depending on your background as a first-time home buyer or maybe as a veteran, there's different programs accessible. It's worth saying, regardless of what the mortgage deal is, the energy efficiency of the house means your utility bills are going to be very, very low. These homes are approximately 25% more energy efficient than what is required by code, and code today is already quite efficient. Also, because of the 15-year NEZ tax abatement, you have very low property taxes to start off your ownership. So it's a great value in terms of cost of ownership.
Are you considering doing this again in other neighborhoods in Detroit? Or do you want to stay in the villages, or do you want to expand more to the east, more to the west?
We see lots of opportunity in Detroit. Similar to the villages, there's other places in the city that have great historic homes that are really having life breathed back into them in recent years, with not just home renovations, but also with the retail opportunities, the stores, the restaurants, etc. And so we would love to expand this around Detroit, but for now our focus is really making sure we can do a great job here on Fisher Street in the East Village, and after that we'll take it from there.
And it's 23 homes that you have available. Is that including, are these 2 for sale, or one of them is?
Correct. So there's 23 home sites on Fisher. 3 of those have been completed, and 2 of those 3 are already under contract, which is great. We only started marketing a couple weeks ago, and 2 of our 3 available are already under contract. We have 2 more homes that are under construction, and so there's 18 lots left over that are scheduled for future construction.
What's the time frame ETA do you think all of the homes will be built?
Based on what we've seen so far in the last 2 weeks, we feel very promising. I mean, we got 2 homes under contract with essentially no marketing for a product that people don't typically think about. The average consumer doesn't think about buying a new house in Detroit. So with more marketing, really educating the consumer on the fact that this is an opportunity, we expect the remaining homes to go quickly.
That was Jed Halbert speaking about new development projects on Detroit's east side. He spoke with WDET's Brianna Tinsley.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET. And Tia, if you could live on the east side, would you, or are you more of a west side person?
So I was born and raised on the west side. However, I've recently been dabbling in the east side a little bit. And, honestly, just really cool to learn a different side of my city that I've grown up in. And honestly, it doesn't really matter at this point. Now that I've gone on the east side, I've been around on the east side, grew up on the west side. Both sides have their benefits. Both sides have their other things. But overall, it's Detroit, and I love it so much. No matter where I am in the city of Detroit, I love being in the city of Detroit. And Nick, speaking of Detroit, the Pistons, they did lose the NBA draft lottery. They dropped down to number 5. You're the worst team in the league, and you don't even get the first pick in the draft. So that's
Well, that's happened for him 3 times. And by the way, when you're the worst team in the league, that only gets you in the slot to be one of the top 4.
And you
as the same as the 4. So it shows that they got kicked out. The worst you can do is 5th if you have the worst record. It's happened to them 3 times.
As a Detroiter, I'm telling you now, I am bitter about it. I am upset about it, and I think we need justice right now for the Pistons. Hopefully they do something better than they did last season, because we can't defend you all for too long. Either way, coming up, Nick, we'll hear from Highland Park's fire chief about how that fire department and city have changed over the last several decades.
This is the Metro.
Welcome back to the Metro, right here on 101.9 WDET FM. I am Tia Graham.
And I'm Nick Austin. And this month, we learned that for the first time in 40 years, the city of Highland Park's fire department is fully staffed. And that's a significant milestone for the city, as it's faced a lot of financial challenges. In fact, this news arrives on the heels of the agreement to settle the dispute over $55 million in what the state says were unpaid water bills and wastewater fees. But for Highland Park and its residents, the news is significant, not just for what it means for the community right now, but what it says about recovery efforts moving forward. To learn a little bit more about this monumental occasion, we're joined by Eric Hollowell, Fire Chief for the Highland Park Fire Department and a lifelong resident of the city. He's here to tell us about the news, what it means. Fire Chief Hollowell, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I want to start here, though, because one of the things that I think is fascinating about your story, and we're going to get into this news a bit, but you're a unique person to talk about with this because of your ties not only to the city, but also public safety in Highland Park. Can you just give us a little bit of background about how you got your start there with public safety and became fire chief?
Sure. I started out at 16 years old in high school. Once I turned 18, they sent me to the police academy. And a year later, fire academy, and I've been there ever since.
Yeah, and when I think about 16, I didn't even know they let 16-year-olds into a cadet training department. Is that something that they do now, or do we got to call Child Protective Services?
Now you probably need Child Protective Services.
It was was this voluntary? but for you, then public safety was something that was important for you for an early age.
Yes.
Why was it so important for you, especially for someone who's being in Highland Park? What did you feel like you could contribute? Why did you feel like that was the path for you in the city?
I don't know. Coming up as a kid, just you see fire trucks or police cars, you're like, man.
Yeah.
What's so cool about it? I got to do both.
You got to do both, right? You have this unique background. But as we mentioned, the fact that we're talking about this moment right now is because for 40 years, we weren't quite staffed at the place that the chief would have said you needed. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you saw for the department during this stretch of time before becoming fire chief and heck since?
One of the big problems that we were dealing with, which was manpower, obviously, it was all part-time. Nothing against the part-time personnel whatsoever. I promise you on that. I've hired, majority of the guys I've hired full-time from the part-time program, so it's not a picking on the part-time program. But in order for you to control what you're doing, especially for an emergency service, you need to know who's going to be there. Not have to look at the schedule, who's coming in today at this time, that time. Now I know who's there for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that can be pretty significant, especially from an oversight spot. And how long have you been fire chief for?
5 years now.
5 years working with that. So I'm sure there's a lot of juggling that goes along with it. But let me know a little bit now that you have reached this milestone. What were some of the key factors that let you get to this point where you're able to get fully staffed up?
You mentioned it a few minutes ago about the water deal. Once that was settled, and even prior to then, once I saw dollars sitting, I used.
Don't let anybody else get to these dollars and take them from me.
Yeah.
These are earmarked for Fire Chief Hollowell.
Tell me twice.
All right, that's fair enough.
So, and then I just kept going with it. Kept going.
And no one told you to stop?
Nope.
All right, well, hold on. We don't want another debt ran back up just on fire safety people. Go ahead.
Here, you're like this.
All right.
I'm actually under budget.
Oh. And how many people do you have on staff now? What is fully staffed for you?
We're at 34, 35.
How many of those get in the truck, though?
Well, every last one of them, with the exception of myself.
Oh, okay. Well, this is good. If I want to get Chief Hollowell somewhere, I can't just try to get the trucks to come out. You don't go on the trucks yourself. I didn't realize, when you're talking about staffing, I didn't know if that meant operators, if that meant administrative personnel. You're talking about literally the people that get on the truck. Then.
The actual, we have no secretaries. There's no secretary.
All right. Doing all your work there. Well, that's good. Now that you are fully staffed up, though, what are you going to be able to do for residents that you weren't able to do before?
Again, provide continuous service.
Was there a time where there was no fire service? What would happen in that moment?
No, it was never, ever like that in Highland Park. If you watch the news, it made it seem like we had planes going down every day in Highland Park.
Well, I didn't say that, but fair.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. But again, from that point, just keep going,
Yeah. All right. Well, are there any goals that you have now moving forward now that we've hit this point with hiring in the city?
Continue hiring.
Yeah.
And then also now getting into medical.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. I want to make sure before we get out of here, though, Highland Park, city within a city, we hear a lot of things. We hear these negative news stories, but I don't know how much everybody is so familiar with what's happening there. For you, can you talk just a little bit about the history from your lifelong perspective about where Highland Park was, where it's come, and what you're hoping for in the future?
At one point in time, the city of Highland Park had 4 fire stations within a 2.9 square mile city. The manpower was at its peak at 115, and that's just for the fire department. The police department was even more than that. From the time when I started, we were still in the 100. To where that now,
fully staffed is a third of that. Yeah. All right. Well, we're rooting for you, getting back up there. Highland Park, of course. You drive on Woodward, you're going to be driving through it. So it's a very important part of what we're doing here. What you do with public safety is also very important as well. That's why I'm so happy that you could join us, Fire Chief Eric Hollowell. Thanks for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you.
This is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. You just heard from Nick Austin. I'm Tia Graham. And Nick, did you ever want to be a firefighter?
Absolutely not.
Oh. The response was just too. That's a no for you. That's a huge no for you.
Have you ever seen what fire can do to things?
I know.
No.
Never.
Admiration for you guys who do it. I've seen the movie Backdraft. Nothing about that looked like fun.
I watched 911 that used to come on Fox. I see what you guys do. I see what firefighters and first responders do. And it's so much more than people give them credit for. So, yeah, I never thought, hey, I'm going to be a firefighter. So I commend firefighters and first responders, of course, police officers, everyone out there who put their lives on the line every single day. So, Nick, you knew early on It's not for me.
Not for me.
It's not for me, but that's the Metro for Monday, March 13th. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt, with assistant producers Anel Scott, Sydney Walke, and engineer Nate Bender.
The Metro is a production of WDET, a listener service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear and want to support the Metro, consider becoming a member at WDET.org/donate.
You're listening to 101.9 WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.
Have a good one.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.